Sweet morning, YouTube. Hello, my name's Alex Bensinger, and I haven't posted a video in like 2 weeks, and I know. Anyway, today's vlog slash how-to comes from one of my previous teachers in high school. His name's Tim Webker, and he teaches personal finance to about 200 students. Today, Tim comes to me with a question for himself. A little bit of background on Tim. Tim is a very engaging and passionate and interesting teacher to have, to say the least. He was one of my favorite teachers I had in high school, and he continues to pay dividends to me in education. Tim is also a novelist, a writer, and an aspiring entrepreneur. Tim sent me this email like 4 months ago, and I was so busy that I didn't even respond to that schniz. I'm sorry, Tim. Today, what I'm gonna be doing is going through Tim's email. Tim emailed me like this morning and was like, hey, I know you're busy, but it's super important for me to know this. So he says, I am asking you because of your amazing background in marketing. Oh, thanks, Tim. I have a teachers pay teachers store for which I have done zero marketing. Even with that, I have made a few sales. Although I don't know how anyone finds the store, but it has 75 products and I use all of them. So essentially he's created an e-commerce website where he sells things that are useful to teachers. What a great niche market idea. I love that. He goes on to say, I think many other teachers would find them really beneficial. So here's what I would like to know. His question is, what do you think would be a good offer for me to hire an acquaintance to do the marketing for me? And he hopes that he'll get a little bit of teaching and learning out of that experience along the way, which is perfectly reasonable to ask for. You don't get what you don't ask for, Mr. Bensinger always says. He lays out 3 different scenarios that essentially are all the same concept, they just use different numbers. The first scenario I'll go into in detail. He wants to pay the marketer $1,000 of all sales until he reaches $1,000. Then he receives 90% of all profits until he has made $5,000. At that point, he receives 10% of all sales until he decides to stop doing the marketing for me. Tim goes on to say, option B is he receives the first $5,000 of all sales. And once he reaches $5,000, he receives 50% until he has made $10,000. At that point, he receives 10% of all sales until he decides to stop marketing for me. So it's essentially the same concept, just the numbers are a little bit higher. And option C is he receives the first $10,000 of all sales. Once he reaches $10,000, then he receives 20% until he has made $20,000. At this point, he receives 10% of all sales until he decides to stop marketing for me. Tim, these are all great options, but I'm gonna choose option A for a very specific reason. The numbers that you're using are the lowest and most reasonable to set as goals. Oftentimes, when we're dealing with money and when we're dealing with project timelines, it's easy to miscalculate. Actually, it's extremely easy to miscalculate. So if you're projecting your sales and you say that your first year you're gonna make $20,000, well, I say it's probably gonna be $10,000. There's not a lot of luck that happens in entrepreneurship. There's not a lot of things that just fall in your lap without years of hard work. So I'm choosing option A because it's the most realistic number. I think when you're getting started, it's easy to make projections that are up here when really you need to be down here. And that's why I'm choosing option A. So we'll read option A again. He receives $1,000 of all the sales. Once he reaches $1,000, he receives 90% of all profits until he has made $5,000. At that point, he receives 10% of all sales until he decides to stop marketing for me. So that's the plan I want to go with, and I like it. A, because it's a realistic price. It's the lowest projection that you have, so it's going to be the easiest to attain up front. Secondly, I like this one because it holds the marketer accountable, allows them to be autonomous, and doesn't give them all of the risk of your business. Now, what do I mean by all of the risk of your business? Wow. So the main thing I notice about this strategy you came up with, Tim, is that you're not giving him all of the risk. You're not giving your marketer all of the risk, right? When you start your company, it's fairly easy and tempting to tell your marketer to give you results before actually paying him. In this case, you are letting him take the profits from the results as they come in. which is highly motivating to your marketer. A marketer is completely helpless if the product or service you are offering is crap. In this case, he doesn't have to reach a certain level of success before he sees a dime. He can actually start making money right off the bat, which is very smart, Tim, very smart. Don't give all of the risk to the marketer because it's not his fault if your product or service fails. What you need to do to motivate and hold your marketer accountable is you need to be giving him a metric to hit. You need to be giving him a certain number that he needs to hit. So first thing we need to do is choose what metric we're using. We can measure profits, we can measure cost per acquisition, we can measure the amount of people that have seen the advertisement. That's a little bit tricky because it's really easy to get people to see things. It's really hard to get people to buy things, which is why typically I recommend my clients hold me accountable using cost per acquisition. How much does it cost to get a customer to purchase something from your website? Now, Tim, I like this model a lot, but you need to factor in one more number, and that's gonna be your ad spend. So advertising can happen organically, where you're posting on Instagram, where you're doing blog posts and not pushing them at all. You're letting the people come to you either through Google or Instagram or something like that, being referred somehow. Then there's paid advertising, which is what I assume this case will require. Paid ads are what you see on Facebook and what you see on the top of Google and what you see before YouTube videos play. Now, paid ads are powerful because you can pretty much do anything that you need to do. You can target anybody that you need to target as long as you've got the cheddar. So, how much cheddar are you willing to put in to this campaign? That's gonna be money coming right out of your pocket initially. Maybe you could front him $500 of your own money to get started and then somehow factor in a ad spend that builds up based on the profits of your company as the marketing campaign continues. So make sure you're paying attention to how much you're doing an ad spend, because that is a real number that needs to be decided upon before you get started. But once you figured out ad spend, I like the idea of giving him the first $1,000 of all sales. Now, my only question there is, are those profits or is that revenue? Does the product that you're offering have any expense to it? And how are you covering that expense as you're paying the profits out to your marketer? Do you have any cash saved up for that? Or will you need to factor in the cost of goods sold before you pay out your marketer? So once he reaches $1,000, then he receives 90% of all profits until he has made $5,000. So this is a good idea because he's gonna build the campaign, he's gonna make it strong to start with, right? Because he's incentivized to do that. After it has momentum, which is a real thing that can happen in advertising, he only needs to intermittently check up on the campaign in order to maintain its success. So incentivizing him to do a good job to start with is a fantastic idea. And that'll be a good card that you can play once the $5,000 has expired and he will continue to do marketing for you, hopefully. I think after $5,000, incentivizing him with 10% of all profits is a good number. Typically in the marketing industry, you are looking at a commission number between 10 and 15, possibly 20% for some higher end agencies, but nothing above that, and certainly nothing below 10%. I think 10% is a good number. You should stick with that. But certainly I would recommend you define what profit is. You define what he's getting after the expenses, or after the ad spend, or before the ad spend. But you need to be factoring in those numbers as well. Overall, I think it's a fairly generous offer for your marketer, and you should continue with some variation of that plan. He goes on to say many marketers prefer a flat rate. Well, anybody would prefer a flat rate, right? But that doesn't incentivize them to accomplish anything. If you're giving them a flat rate, then you have to have some sort of metric you're using to measure their success and hold them accountable. We talked about this earlier. That could be profits, that could be cost per acquisition, that could be website views. It's up to you. I like cost per acquisition because after seeing that number, it becomes immediately apparent whether or not your marketing campaign can be sustainable using the income it's making. I think giving the marketer an opportunity to make an extraordinary amount of money on this campaign is a good idea because, well, you've got to keep them around, right? And you got to pay for good talent. It's important to ask what platforms the marketer will be using. I recommend that you should at least be on Facebook. It could potentially be Google. There's a lot of Google marketers out there, and I don't have anything against them. I just know that Facebook is a tad cheaper and a tad more flexible when it comes to marketing things like this. Just whatever you do, make sure you keep it as simple as possible, because it tends to drive people away when the money part of things is uncomfortable. And the more you talk about it, the more uncomfortable it makes people somehow. But that's just the reality of it. So please, you know, when you're building this proposal for him, get it in writing. Both of you sign it, and both of you can refer to the agreement once the process has started. Tim ends the email by saying he'd love to hear what I'm up to, and he hopes that I can visit his class next semester. I would love to, Tim. I'm looking forward to it. Shoot me an email with those available dates, and I promise this time I'll get back to you, Tim. I hope this video somewhat answered some of your questions, Tim, and some of my viewers' questions as well. I apologize if I was using some terms that I didn't explain. If you have any questions about anything I said, you can just leave a comment on this video below and I would answer it for you. And anybody can leave a comment. If it's Tim, it's you. If it's one of your students, or if it's one of my YouTube subscribers, I want you guys to talk to me and I want to talk to you guys. So please be leaving those comments below, and I promise to get back to every single one of you. Other than that, stay tuned for the next video, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more awesome content like this. We'll see you next time. Alex out.